Welcome to the Vintage Reserve. If you're a watch enthusiast or just interested in owning a luxury timepiece, then odds are you've thought of purchasing a Rolex. Unfortunately, Rolexes are expensive, and we don't all have an extra $8,000 lying around. Even if you do, you also need to be selected by a Rolex authorized dealer for the privilege of being offered a Rolex to buy. You can't just walk into a store and buy one, unfortunately. And the last thing most of us want is to work hard to afford a Rolex, and then to be told that we aren't good enough to purchase one. But you can still buy a Rolex on a budget, and without waiting for an authorized dealer to offer you one. The trick is to buy pre-owned vintage Rolex. There are literally millions and millions of vintage Rolex on the pre-owned market. And they aren't a particularly rare item either, they're just valuable. Many pre-owned Rolex still cost just as much as a new one, or in many cases, significantly more. But there is a model that you can reliably find that will save you thousands without sacrificing much. And you may even gain things a modern Rolex won't give you. The best part is I'm not even talking about some niche Cellini or forgotten product line that Rolex made back in the day. I'm talking about arguably the most iconic and recognizable Rolex in the world, the classic Rolex Datejust 36. Rolex has changed very little in their design language over the years, so a Rolex Datejust from the 60s or 70s still looks like a Datejust today. You get the durable oyster case, an in-house COSC certified movement, and even the iconic Rolex Cyclops. 36mm is also the classic size, perfect for most wrists, and is still offered today in Rolex's modern lineup. Now that super large watches have finally fallen out of fashion, 36mm is perfect daily wearing size. Rolex Datejusts wear a bit big on the wrist, so you get the comfort of a reasonably sized watch that isn't getting in your way. You can even easily wear it with a fitted dress shirt. But the watch doesn't disappear on your wrist either. It's noticeable for those who know, without being dangerously flashy for all those would-be Rolex thieves. A vintage Datejust looks like a Rolex, it feels like a Rolex, and guys, that's because it is a Rolex. Now I won't lie, you will be making some sacrifices choosing to buy vintage. Some older Datejusts, such as those with the 1570 movement, don't have hacking or quick set functions, but once the watch is set to the correct time and date, this doesn't impact the actual wearing of the watch. These older movements run at a lower beat frequency, so the sweep is not quite as smooth either, but a lower frequency also means less wear on the movement over time. You'll also be dealing with an acrylic crystal instead of a sapphire one, but this actually may not even be a bad thing. Acrylic doesn't shatter like sapphire can, so if you accidentally drop your watch, an acrylic crystal may actually hold up better. An acrylic is going to scratch much more easily than sapphire, but you can also buff scratches out of acrylic crystals relatively easily. If you scratch a sapphire crystal, you're going to have to pay a hefty price to replace the entire crystal. Acrylic crystals, on the other hand, are very affordable to replace, so even if you do scratch yours beyond repair, it's not going to cost you very much to fix. Now, the biggest sacrifice that you'll be dealing with, in my opinion, is the water resistance. It's not advisable to get a vintage watch wet, as over time the seals do degrade. That being said, a serviced watch should have new seals, and the oyster case should keep everything safe, so you at the very least don't need to worry about washing your hands, or, something like the rain. But you certainly wouldn't want to swim in a vintage Rolex or leave it wet for an extended period of time, even though some collectors do claim that it's fine. Even though there are these sacrifices that you may face when buying a vintage Datejust, there are many advantages as well. The biggest one being the price. Guys, you can pick up a vintage 36mm Datejust from a trusted dealer for well under $5,000. If you look hard enough, it's not even rare to find them for around $3,500, especially if you're willing to buy one on a strap instead of a bracelet. In fact, these vintage Datejust are perfect for mixing straps. You can easily change the style by switching out the strap with plenty of fun colors and materials. Want something sporty? Throw on a rubber or even a nylon NATO strap. Want something elegant? A black crocodile strap looks amazing for formal events. Looking for something really under the radar? A nice tan cowhide pairs perfectly. The 20mm lug width on a 36mm Datejust makes finding straps too easy. Vintage Datejust also come in a wide variety of unique dials. Champagne, silver, and black with a stepped pipe hand-like dial are going to be the most common, but you can find beautiful tapestry and linen dials, or even colorful Buckley dials. This also opens up the possibility of finding a beautiful patina, although you're likely going to pay more for a rarer dial. But you have options. Most modern Rolex dials are so simple and perfect that they can almost come across as a bit sterile. Vintage dials give off a charm and character all of their own, which is why so many high-end collectors covet and collect them. You also have more options for bezels as well. Not taking gem set into account, modern Rolex offers a smooth or a fluted bezel. You can find these in vintage as well, but you'll also find engine-turned steel bezels, which give you a nice middle option for those who find the smooth bezels to be a bit too boring, but find the precious metal fluted bezels to be a little too blingy. Something I've never heard anyone bring up before when talking about vintage Rolex is how their earlier movements really weren't ever faked. It wasn't until a bit later in the later 70s that the fake Rolexes started to flood the markets. And it wasn't until the last 5 or so years that those older movements increased in value enough, as Rolex did, to be worth faking. Why put resources into faking a movement worth a few $100s at the time when you could fake a movement worth a few thousand? Buying from a trusted seller is very important, but knowing that older movements like the 1570 weren't ever really faked gives you even more peace of mind when buying a pre-owned Rolex. Since, let's be honest, authenticity can be a bigger worry for buyers than the price at times. A lot of young collectors who are just getting into watches think that a real Rolex is out of reach. I fell into that category myself. I was looking at the Tudor Black Bay models, like many do, looking for that Rolex feel because I thought a real Rolex was just out of reach. But that's not actually the case. Odds are that you can buy an iconic Rolex for the same price as that Tudor Black Bay. So if you want a Rolex, don't settle, because you don't have to. There is an elegance and beauty to a vintage Rolex, which is why so many serious collectors flock to them, and why many vintage Rolex models sell for huge premiums. Luckily, the Datejust has avoided this for the most part, leaving a great option for those of us on a more budget-friendly mind to add that coveted Rolex crown to our collections. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please consider liking and dropping a comment. You have no idea how much a little interaction helps a channel grow, and if you want to follow us for future videos, hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you for watching, and remember to take care with what you wear.